So talking about cultural diversity and tolerance, let's go back to this Wikipedia definition. Culture is defined as social behavior and norms found in human societies. Okay? In the earth, in different areas, you have different types of societies and communities. So not everybody grows up the same and has the same foundations and has the same standards, but each one has what they call norms or mores or standards of behavior. Okay, it wouldn't be acceptable for women to run around with like grass skirts and no coverings on the top in the United States, right? You wouldn't walk into the store dressed like that. You wouldn't, go to school like that. And, we have this, on all these stores you see little signs like no shirt, no shoes, no service, right? So, but if you were in some place like tropical island, I don't know what they're like in Tahiti, but we'll just say Tahiti, or some place where that was the norm, it would be absolutely acceptable mm-hmm. for me to dress like that, right? Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't come to class looking like that. Okay, so there's different standards and different behaviors that are expected of people in different groups throughout the world. Okay, so we're going to read this Universal Declaration on Cultural Diversity that was adopted by the General Conference of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, which is UNESCO. Okay, those letters are all put together for UNESCO. And you've seen little Christmas cards or whatever mm-hmm. sold by UNESCO to fund their activities. So we look at that, we say that the United Nations here has a division that is dedicated to education, science, and culture throughout the world. Mm-hmm. Okay. And in 2001, they issued a declaration and that consists of 12 articles. Okay? Culture should be regarded as the set of distinctive, spiritual, material, intellectual, and emotional features of society or a social group, and that it encompasses, in addition to art and literature, lifestyles, ways of living together, value systems, traditions, and beliefs. Okay. So they're identifying different characteristics that are found in society and what a group's culture would be considered. When you think of an Oriental culture, what picture do you get? What images do you get? What ideas do you think of?
I think of women that have the feet tied up, tied up tight, and the buns way up high, the white face, and
okay.
the corset.
Okay, so that's basically
the old
Japanese
or Chinese, whatever one
that
of them.
was basically Japanese. Okay, so there's
with
that.
The feet tied up.
So you might think of certain types of material.
Mm-hmm.
Silk. You think of silk, and you might think of parades. When you think of a parade that has to do with the dragons, and you think of certain types of foods.
Mm-hmm. Egg rolls.
Maybe egg rolls, right? Okay. When you're thinking of
fortune cookies.
And fortune cookies, okay. And you might think of chopsticks.
Mm-hmm. Chopsticks, right.
Okay. And
Green tea.
what do you think about when their attitude toward older people?
They really respect them.
They are real respectful. Yeah.
Okay. So there's certain ideas, there's
Right.
certain things that
Right.
you think of with that type of culture. Now, if you think of an Inuit, or which is
Mhm.
the politically correct term now for like Eskimos, you know, what type of things do you think about in that type of culture?
Whales food.
Okay.
Like
Dog
a
sled.
bunch of fur.
Fur, you know, like parkas, it's
Yes.
cold.
Dog sleds.
Dog sleds, you think of, you talked about
The blubber that they eat.
blubber.
They do.
and their physical characteristics, how are they different from
Short and round.
Darker
Because-
skin.
Yeah, darker skin.
darker skin? Their features are more rugged, they're not as refined
Right,
as,
The Chinese, the
right, or
Oriental,
Europeans for that matter.
Europeans, right.
And when you think of Latin America,
Salsa, dancing.
Castanet, ta-da.
you think of
Dancing.
The tango.
dancing, you think of a lot of a certain type of food, you think of like a little bit more
Tango.
expressive, colorful, happy, lively, and
Yeah.
loud, right?
Right.
Okay, so, I mean, we all have different perceptions, and when you go to these different areas, you might find some of those things are true,
Correct.
but some of them are not quite accurate.
Mhm. That's true.
Okay, so, but each culture has their own characteristics, okay? What it's talking about here is that in each of these cultures, there are distinctive spiritual aspects, material, intellectual, and emotional aspects of those social groups. And that takes into account different types of art and literature, their lifestyles, okay? Their ways of living together. They have different value systems. In America, among a certain ethnic group, people are a little bit more concerned with having their own house in a nice neighborhood, okay? But other ethnic groups are more, because of their upbringing and their little community, might be more interested in nicer, more expensive clothes than owning a bigger, more expensive house. Some of them, okay.
Sure.
A nicer,
Right.
more expensive,
Wardrobe.
flashier car, whereas a different group might be in something that's a little bit more practical, okay? So those are their value systems. One group finds certain thing, this type of thing important, and another group finds a different material things or ideas important. Some cultures, some groups have very close family ties, and others do not, okay? And different groups have different beliefs, okay? Culture is at the heart of contemporary debates about identity, social cohesion, and development of a knowledge-based economy. Okay, so I want you to keep in mind the idea of identity. Respect for the diversity of cultures, tolerance, dialogue, and cooperation in a climate of mutual trust and understanding are among the best guarantees of international peace and security. So how does that differ from what we as Christians would think guarantees international peace and security? let me rephrase that. Where do we think peace and security comes from?
God.
Okay, so this is saying that what brings peace and security is outward, is the fact that we work together and I let you do what you're doing and respect that and your difference, and that's going to bridge a mutual trust and understanding, and because of this,
Whole blanket spectrum of
we're going to have
happiness.
international peace and,
Mhm.
you know, and, you know,
Right.
world peace. Okay. Okay, understanding multicultural. All right, multi means what?
Then one.
More than one.
More than one. And cultural, we talked about cultural, but
It changes.
culture changes?
Well, what does it mean? It simply changes in certain aspects, in certain divisions, certain areas.
Okay, so that we're talking about, it's the normal behaviors and ideas found in different groups.
Different societies.
So thinking about your own culture, what kind of elements do you find in, characteristics do you find in your particular community or ethnic group? Okay, Kathy, you're from an Irish background.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
My family's Native American.
Okay,
Mhm.
My great grandfather was a chief. My grandpa, like, he's 65 and he still hunts. He like chops wood. And when I go there, he has like dream catchers and like animals like hanging up, you know. And he doesn't make like processed food. He makes his own food, you know, like the food that he hunts and just uses it. The way he dresses than others. My father, they're all like dark skinned and they go hunting a lot. I don't know if I said that. And they have long hair, so and that's where I get it from. Yeah, I don't know.
so that, and they have certain things that are important in as I guess we call them
Spiritual.
indigenous groups,
Yeah,
right?
like
Right.
they're religious. You know, my father and my grandpa, they go to church. You know, so as long as everyone else, you know, and yeah, they're pretty normal.
You know, so you mentioned dream catchers. What do they think about dream catchers?
Dream catchers. Well,
Is it just like a trinket? It's just, or
It's real.
or do they have a
test the
spiritual significance too?
well, my grandpa were told me like he would always hang it like above like my bed. It's like this will help you. Like it was Native Americans that like if you have bad dreams, it will go away.
Mhm.
You know, and I've always been taught that. You know,
Mhm.
so
Okay. And some, okay, and Kathy, what about?
The Irish, really?
Yeah.
Well, the Irish is not as family orientated as like the Italians or the Irish is basically stick to your own and, you know, you don't, you just stick to your own and that's what it is. You walk into grandma's house, the fights stop, you get along with the family, but after the corner street, it's like, come on. And a lot of, you know, just in Ireland, it's like every other every other storefront is a pub, so a lot of drinking. lots of drinking in Irish people. I mean, that's personal, my family. But I don't talk to them, so I'm the only one that's, I'm out of the loop,
You're out of the
basically,
loop.
so. Yeah.
All right, so some of those things you can find in this list from the United Nations, things that
The bullet points?
that they
Okay.
consider part of culture,
Mhm.
but what's not there, there's a lot of different individual groups, but there's not, what's not there,
What's not there?
what's not there.
Well, I know, like in Ireland, like I said, the majority, it's like the, the pubs, but they don't really talk about in the literature the strong education background of Ireland.
So that's
So
important to
That's very
some
important,
groups.
very important to
Okay.
subgroups of Ireland, yeah.
So there's a couple of things that aren't mentioned in this United Nations Declaration. One of them I see is there's not a thing about family. And previously what I noticed is there's nothing about national identity. When you think of the United Nations, what do you think? What do you think of?
Represents all countries
Of
and
everyone, yeah.
cultures.
What about when it says ways of living together, would that not be constituted as family? Ways of living together, and value systems and traditions.
What?
It doesn't say the word family, but that's one part of ways to live together.
Well, it is a way to live together, but what they're looking at, I think, is they have a group of all these countries that are trying to decide for the little people how to live.
How to live, right. Okay.
They're not respecting that the United States is a sovereign nation that has a right to make their own rules and
I see what you're saying, okay.
and
That's what's not there.
choose for ourselves, and they're trying to say, when you're talking about, well, ways to live together between Afghanistan and the rest of the world, with and
Syria,
right,
yeah, right.
and how to cooperate with India and Egypt, and they're not talking about that. If you look at Germany and the European community, that's probably a better example of the European community telling its member states
Right, right. The euro for the.
how they can live. Okay. You see today, DNA testing. Okay, we do it to find out,
Right,
Our-
right.
to verify this is my
Our background.
parent, but when people are, do like Ancestor.com and you get your DNA, I mean, you said your
Something
background
different.
is Native American, right?
Right.
Okay. My husband is 100% Italian.
Right.
Both his parents were 100% Italian. His father came from Italy. Okay? But today, people are doing DNA testing.
Mhm.
How many of you have seen a commercial where there's a Hispanic lady
Right.
that says that always said she was
Right.
Hispanic,
Right.
and she gets her DNA sample done, and now what does she say?
33.2% of something else.
Right, she's part of this,
Right,
this,
all of
and
it,
this,
all of it, everything.
and so now I'm everything.
Diversified. I count other instead of female now. That was a commercial. In a resume, instead of marking off female, I count other, because I am all diversified.
Okay, or there's an Italian guy who says, he's married to I'm an Italian, and he's got somebody, he does the DNA thing, and he's got some kind of Germanic blood.
Right.
Okay, so he's not, even though he's 100% Italian, now I'm not Italian anymore.
Lederhosen, he's got.
Oh yeah,
The
there's,
Swiss.
right, that's the other one. So what does that convey to you?
You watch too much TV.
Yes, people watch too much TV, but they're not,
They're not what they think they are.
I think they're
they're,
just fishing to give to start some other dispute
Okay.
in people. That's what I believe, I really think.
there's, what this is bringing up to me is a term that you might not be familiar with, globalism.
Globalism, yeah.
Okay. Globalism is the attitude or policy of placing the interests of the world, the entire world, above those of individual nations. Okay.
The world instead of individuals.
Okay. So I'm part of the world community. I'm not American anymore. I don't identify with being American. I am a citizen of the world. So, and then tribe versus tribalism. Tribalism may also refer in popular culture to a way of thinking or behaving in which people are loyal to their social group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that also reflects on nationalism. Patriotism is a dirty word today.
That's right, sure is. It's common.
Okay, and take a look at the idea of, are you familiar with Brexit? Nobody knows about that.
I've never heard that word before.
Brexit was a decision by England to for Britain to exit the European community, because they were interested in Britain more than
The euro.
the Euro, because the people felt that the European community was not interested in the British citizen and their personal needs. So they voted, and they're in the process of withdrawing from the European community. Okay? Why this is important is there's this wave of thought today that everybody needs to be like everybody, but everybody needs to be different from everybody. Okay? As a Christian, we talk about a one world government that is a type and a shadow of the Antichrist. That there is going to be one time, there's going to be a world, the whole world under one leader, and the spirit is going to be Antichrist. Okay? And what I'm saying to this is that when you're looking at this declaration, we have other nations and other philosophies determining what happens in America and to Americans. Okay? So what the spirit of the world is saying right now is that some of these different elements that they're trying to impose, ways of living together,
Mhm.
the decline of marriage
Mhm.
and traditional marriage.
Mhm.
Okay, breaking down of standards that were previously accepted. Okay, why am I saying this in this class is that so that we understand what secular society, the mindset of people that are not involved in a Christian religion are thinking, what the educational system today in the United States is implanting in people's minds, and why it's swinging so
Mhm.
and becoming so liberal. Okay,
Mhm.
because we have to understand who we're dealing with and where they're coming from. Okay. There was a paper that Nitza Hidalgo wrote, and it talks about 3 levels of culture. All right.
Okay. 1993.
Right. Okay, there's concrete, where you identify on a concrete level that's the most visible and tangible level of culture, and includes surface level dimensions like clothes, music, food, games. If you go to a country and you say, well, this group of people,
Mhm.
and identify on a very basic level. And while you interact, I like this kind of food, this kind of music,
Mhm.
I like football, you like soccer.
Mhm. Soccer really is football.
Right,
Yeah.
for American football. But
Right. I think you're right.
behavioral, it's a little bit more in-depth level of interaction. It clarifies how we define our social roles, the language we speak, and our approaches to communication. This level reflects our values,
Mhm.
okay?
Mhm.
So you might have something in common with somebody at work because you like the same kind of music, or you like Chinese food, and you could just interact on a very surface level. But when you're talking about, this is what a woman should be like, and how what they behave like, and how I value a woman in my society.
Mhm.
If you look, and how we interact with each other, communicate with
Mhm.
one another. How does, well, for example, in one era, people used to say children should be seen and not heard,
Mhm. Right.
right? But today, what is the role of children in society?
They run it. The parents.
Pretty much, okay? Yes.
So they don't want to squelch their spirit and all this cockamamie stuff.
Yeah.
So
How do you
in
feel
one
about,
respect, you're not, when you're interacting with the child, it's not truly interacting with them either when they're just, they should be seen and not heard, they're just there existing, right? You're not
Right.
relating to them
Right.
on their human needs, on their intellectual and emotional levels, right? But then when you're letting them do whatever they want,
Mhm.
you're really, and letting them play their games
Right.
and running off or mouthing off to their teachers.
They're asking a 3rd or 4th grader, what do they think they are today? If you were born a boy, but you want to be called a girl, that's fine too. The gender is whacked everywhere now. That's,
So things are changing.
yeah.
Things are changing. If you go to some countries, a woman is veiled.
Right, right.
She's completely covered.
Burqa.
I wouldn't look at you in the face. You would
Right.
not look at me in the face,
Right.
right?
Right.
In some places, they're not able to become doctors, or they can't be treated by a male doctor, for example.
Can't drive.
I didn't say drive, I can't drive.
Mhm. So there's different roles and different behavioral aspects in different societies. And then symbolic, okay, and that does reflect our values as well, if we, and symbolic is a deeper level of communication, right? It includes our values and beliefs, okay? I can hang out with somebody that's, if I go to a country and my language is German and everybody around me is speaking Italian, and then I come across somebody that's German and you communicate, you hook up, but that's a very basic level. But when I'm communicating to what's important to me, that our values and beliefs, it's a deeper level of communication and interaction. I think it's important to treat you with respect. Well, if that person speaking my language doesn't, looks down on people with white hair, okay? They're not treating me with respect, okay? It's a deeper level of communication. It can be abstract, but it's not the first level. You start off at more basic, and then as you get to know someone, you go into a more intense level. It's often the key to how people divide themselves, okay? So, and this was a very, not a real well-known paper that was published. I had to research it a little bit to get a little bit more of an idea about it after, going through this initial material when I first took over. But I thought it was very indicative of how people relate to each other and how we learn to deal with each other. So I kept it in because it's true. There's different levels of communication, and some are very physical and just very superficial, and then but as you get to be more involved with someone, you find out what their real essence is on the inside. So which items do you consider to be important in how you defined your own culture? Is it concrete, your behavioral aspect, or the symbolic?
I would say personally behavioral, because communications and right there, and I talk a lot. So to me, it would be behavioral.
Okay. In my family, we have some traditions from my grandfather's side of the family, and that they've had certain types of meals at different holidays. They, so for example, in Orthodox Easter.
Oh, right, the week after Easter. Yeah.
Well,
Is it? That was this year.
Well, it can be different than the normal Easter holiday, but you would put, no, it was at Orthodox Christmas, where you would put some money in the sink. It was supposed to be silver, but now it's kind of for a whole week, and you would wash your hands with the money in the sink. And it was supposed to keep your money from disappearing. It was a kind of a symbolic kind of thing. So they did different foods and different traditions, things that they did. Well, it was something that, a meal and a gathering, and it was something that we did with my grandfather's family, his brothers and sisters and their kids. But now, because those relationships, you go your own way and do your own thing, and these people die and you don't have that little tradition together, our interaction is very superficial, and you don't see these people except for at funerals sometimes. So that connection is not very strong. Even though you remember that you had these different traditions, that connection is not very strong. But my connection with people that share my belief system is stronger because I interact with them and I share some things from my innermost being, who I am, what I think, our belief in God. There's people people often say, well, I feel more close to my church family than my
Biological.
my biological family. There's a deeper relationship. Okay. So that's why point number 2 says, why do you find the symbolic to be more important than other levels? Okay, in the list. Okay. Mhm. Because that's where you're going to find out about the people that you deal with, is that as you're first dealing with a person, you're going to get the outside level.
Right.
And that concrete level, what do they like to do? And then as you meeting with them, understand their ideas about society, how they define themselves, the way they communicate. We talked about verbal communication and facial expressions, and am I a visual learner, or do I, what if it's, and then what really means a lot to them. Where are their values, and how are we going to work with them? Okay. So, understanding ourselves is your attempt to understand others culturally consistent with how you want to be viewed and understood. When we were in Belgium, we worked with a subculture, okay, and what held us all together was, number one, a language. There were certain traditions that they had that they all observed, although we weren't from that group because we were working with that community. We involved ourselves in that. The types of meals, their things that were important. They were had very strong traditions about important landmarks in life. Okay, it was a very important thing. Even if the marriage was crummy, they might have a big celebration for the 25th anniversary. Even though their interaction was not good, this was what was important to them. So there was a lot of ceremonies in our church family, a lot of traditions in our religious services. But inside, there was just a lot of different, might not be a whole lot of character. I found there was two families, both from the same country. Okay, there was a lot of different countries represented in our church. Two ladies from the same country, their same national language. They were both in Belgium illegally. They both cleaned houses for a living. But the one lady treated the other lady like a lower class citizen. Both went to our church. but in their country, one came from a lower
Under the tracks.
social economic class,
Wow.
but they're both Christians. Okay, so
That's interesting.
okay, so we can have some of the same characteristics, but
Mm-hmm.
what's not consistent with Christianity about that?
It's not true Christianity to me personally. I'm assuming.
But why?
Why? Because why would you think that you're better than somebody else? But if it's their tradition, there you go, that's another fine line. It's like, well, that's the way they were raised, that's the way that they know, so how is it wrong? And that won't quite.
But as Christians, what does the Bible tell us
We're all
about?
created
We're all
equal,
created
we're made in
equally.
the eyes of God.
And we're the image of God, we're God's children.
Right,
Yeah.
so because I'm smarter than someone, or I'm a better athlete than someone, or I'm richer than someone, am I better than someone?
No. We're all
So-
equal on that end of it,
So,
according to God. That's what he said.
and is that walking in love if I treat you like I'm,
No, that's not walking in love at all.
okay. So, there's different forces in society that, contribute to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
To this is,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So, let's just, close this little section. So we can be more consistent in this summary. We can be more consistent in our interaction, right? We may think that have a concept of how we're being equal and we're treating everybody the same, but we can actually relate to somebody that's created in the image of God
Mm-hmm.
that may not be
Mm-hmm.
on our level.
Right, exactly, true, that's true.
We could consider a homeless person
Mm-hmm.
that way.
Right.
We could consider someone that has a physical or a mental handicap
Mm-hmm.
or an emotionally unstable person as not, we might not treat them the same.
Mm-hmm.
So we can be more consistent with what the Bible says, because we need to look on our inside ourselves too.
Correct.
Just like you could consider someone in prison
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
differently,
Mm-hmm.
okay? How do different forces ranging from media to our own education move us backwards when we think we're making progress? In self and social development.
What's that new saying now about the news? Fake news. That's something different. So that would be definitely put you behind. And you learned about fake news and you thought it was real.
Okay, well, what do different educational institutions, what do scientific organizations and scientists think or convey about their beliefs versus a Christian's belief?
They're wrong, right? In their eyes.
They're right
In their eyes.
And we
are not.
because we're ignorant?
No, because there's no true concept. It's the concrete part of it. Scientists can do the concrete. Look, this is what I have. This is a cup, and it's really a cup. you're telling me that this is abstract, is like something is a belief and you can't touch it or feel it or smell it or see it. So that's not really right, because this cup's, you can see the cup, so that's better.
What you're actually talking about is materialism, which
Right.
they only believe that what's tangible
Right.
is real and
Right.
what is, so that's a different thing, but also, like, because they think that they have scientific evidence
Right,
and that religious beliefs are superstition. And sometimes you could acquaint it to doing a rain dance.
that's hearsay.
You know, it's like,
Mhm.
right? You see what I'm saying? That, you know, type of thing. So, or the media.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
There's one particular church that was very famous for saying very racist and negative things about different ethnic groups, and in particular homosexual people, and active in anti-abortion things.
Mm.
And they were violent, and they were not very loving about what they did. They were fervent in their beliefs, but they reached national news because of and
Negativity.
because of their activities, and didn't reflect really all Christians or that particular denomination. But when you would say that denomination, that it cast a dispersion on them as
Scientology.
racist, that they were violent. So they threw a lot of Christians into that same category, right? That you're homophobes,
Mhm.
right? You're ignorant, superstitious,
Mhm.
that type of, so there's a lot of forces. And if you go into the colleges today,
Yeah.
the same thing is teaching, all through the education system, is teaching young adults their version, their philosophies. And so it really is brainwashing,
Mhm.
okay? So even though they think they're making advances in accepting all people, but they're really
Mhm.
segmentizing. Segmentizing, is that making a different segments society and dividing society, so that pitting one group of people against another. When you talk about Black Lives Matter,
Mhm.
that's pitting, it's taking a group of Americans
Mhm.
and separating them from the rest of the country, promoting their interests above everybody else, but also making it seem like everybody's against them,
Mhm.
that the police are against them,
Mhm.
and what is being promoted.
Mhm.
Maybe in certain areas there is profiling and you're not being fair,
Mhm.
but it's also promoting violence,
Violence, negative.
chaos. Okay, so it seems like it's advancing a particular group's rights and their needs, but what it is actually doing is regressing in unity in the society and producing riots.
Mhm.
In these demonstrations today, you can see there's just,
Yeah, they're getting serious.
it's less less civil,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
people say, according to evolution, that we're progressing, we're evolving into better people, but really when you see what they're doing, what this is happening is they're becoming more base and more animalistic and more primitive in just their reaction. So it's a very dangerous time to be living, I think. And it's reflective to me of the 60s. Okay. So the aspect today is divide and conquer in these special interests. It's still, we're still on the summary. And advancing special interest groups versus unifying America. And it's really taking advantage and controlling these different segmented groups in the United States. If you think of the carpetbaggers in the post-Civil War time, okay, they went down into the South and took advantage of the freed slaves for their own benefits.
Correct, yeah.
They dominated and controlled them and used their new freedoms for their own benefits. And that's the same thing that's happening today.
That's right.
In when I was growing up, looking at in the media, there was a great rise of feminism, and it was reflected in educational system. And in one respect, traditionally throughout the world, it is true that because women were weaker, they weren't educated, they weren't, they were taken advantage of, okay? But it became a philosophy and a mindset in a whole generation of people because of the education system. Women's rights. And you could see it reflected that was what was dispersed in the media, in education, and you could see it reflected in the last presidential election by the age group that was most appealing to, well, that was most reached by the Democratic candidate. One of the strongest supporters that person had was women 50 and older.
Yeah.
Okay, because that was what was promoted in that age group. So let's take a section. Just stop here for a second, and we'll go on to tolerance. So what that all really has to do is that with the United Nations and just different movements throughout the world promoting individual cultural things and accepting them, and even pushing and insisting on this idea of tolerance, that everything is okay. If you believe it, it's okay for you. If it works for you, it's good for you. But that really can't be. Every different little thing cannot all be truth, and it can't all be acceptable. Is it? You know, it's okay for you to lie at work and be deceitful. And if you're gonna, it's okay if you're gonna cheat on your income taxes. If that's what you want to do, if you can live with that, then that's okay. That there is no standard, and that we have to accept everybody's bad characteristics as being all right. Is it all right if she cuts me off on the freeway and I go chasing after her and ram into her car.
No, not so much.
No, it's not. So traditional tolerance is viewed as negative. I'm being judgmental because I'm classifying the driver that goes chasing after somebody as a wacky woman driver. Or because this person from this ethnic group got angry at the driver in front of them, they went and they chased after him and shot him driving by. Okay. We do need standards, and we're not being closed-minded because we're living by these standards. So traditional tolerance is viewed as negative, respecting others' beliefs and practices without sharing them, or the barrier to put up with something not especially liked. Okay? Because I think that this lifestyle is not acceptable, I'm being intolerant. Today, new tolerance, which is viewed as acceptable and positive, every single individual's beliefs, values, lifestyles, and truths are equal. Josh McDowell said that truth cannot be sacrificed at the altar of a pretended tolerance. Some beliefs are false, and we know them to be false. So it does no good to put a halo on the notion of tolerance as if everything could be equally true. Now, we don't need to, or we should not look down on somebody because they have a certain belief or standard or lifestyle. But just because they're doing it does not mean it's right, and that we have to accept it as right. Okay, just don't judge people. Ravi Zacharias in Jesus Among Other Gods said, "Tolerance is the virtue of those who believe in nothing, rather than stand up for what is right or wrong. The voice of tolerance says we should not just let everyone be, that will better understand each other." Oh, I got that backwards.
Got it backwards, I was
did.
thinking, yeah.
Those definitions were by Josh McDowell. The second thing, truth cannot be sacrificed, is Ravi Zacharias. And then Ryan Dobson that's James Dobson, for Focus on the Family Son, in the book Be Intolerant, said tolerance is the virtue of those who believe in nothing rather than stand up for what is right or wrong. The voice of tolerance says we should just let everyone be, that will better understand each other if we accept them as they are. What we do need to do is to respect people, even if we don't believe that
Right, true.
what they're, and treat them with respect, and not get the idea that that person is stupid or wrong. It's they have a different belief system, they have a different idea of what's right or wrong, and we can learn to share that without attacking. I think it's very sad that on social media you see people attacking people and ranting and raving and ridiculing the people's beliefs, whether they're atheists or Christians, or you believe that a tree is the same as a person. It's not right. We need to treat each other with love and respect. I was reading about a world value survey that they did some studies since the 1980s, and the general trends are that as countries industrialize and become more developed, they move away from traditional values like religions, the rituals or customary practices, habits. I'm just trying to say what rituals are, like even things like putting up Christmas stockings could be a ritual, right?
Sunday dinner. with the family.
right, or deference to authorities. You can see that there is not a respect for teachers, law enforcement, parents,
Mhm. Mhm.
mayors.
Mhm.
Okay, so as countries become more advanced, they move away from traditional basic values. And number two, as countries grow wealthier, more citizens move into a service sector, and nations move away from survival values. So that means they're how do I explain it? Well, survival values would be like economic and physical security of a group. So they're doing more to can't think of it. Like I'm not really explaining this at all, am I?
It sounded to me, I was thinking it was oxymoron what you were saying at the end. I was like, but if it's service, how could you be doing the other? To
Well,
me,
they called it a
it's like-
service sector, but it's more like benefits, and you're not concentrated on basic things like economic and physical security of the group,
Okay.
but they're more on, I should have put better examples. I'll have to look it up again. But they're expanding their programs, and
More of
With
your
more
own financial
service, the
gain rather
expanding.
than the gain of the people. Or
well,
service.
well, like when a nation is when you're first starting out, you're trying to get on it's like today, right, with this administration, okay, the president is more focusing on America's infrastructure, getting America's
Correct.
economy going, their sovereignty, their protection, whereas as people move away from that when the country is wealthier and they're expanding on programs,
Profit.
not profit, but services to the people, and outside of sending foreign aid or expanding social programs. And they're concentrating more on education and putting money in different
Okay. Instead of the infrastructure of the bottom.
and the
core,
needs of the
core
people.
of the foundation.
Today, more people are thinking about, you're thinking about sending money to this country that had this national disaster, and all the needs of, we have food, and that country doesn't have food. So you're expanding your outreach to beyond your own needs. I guess this kind of goes along with that. It might explain a little bit. In 2007, the United Kingdom's Prime Minister Gordon Brown made a speech talking about British jobs for British workers. Okay? And he received criticism for concentrating on his that nationalism idea, that his country's needs, his people's needs,
Mhm.
and not that world, one world kind of
Mhm.
idea.
Mhm.
What do you think about that? If your country, if your population doesn't have any work,
Sustain, right, if it can't, right, so it's gotta continue, try to be contained just to itself, to try to build it back up.
well, yeah, I mean, if
Or
I'm,
at least it would be
if my citizens
Mhm,
don't
mhm.
have jobs,
Why ship it out to another country to
they
make it?
they can't live,
Right,
right?
right,
Somebody else has to support them.
right.
And where are they gonna get the money for their houses? Where are they gonna get the money for the food? Where are they gonna get, so why am I concerned with what's going on in,
Another country.
Taiwan.
yeah, I was trying to invent a fake name so I didn't
Yeah, well, yeah,
say
that would
something,
be, yeah.
yeah, you know,
I'm thinking the furthest away from us, you know. I don't
Right.
know.
in
Australia.
Timbuktu.
in Timbuktu, we can say
Yeah.
Timbuktu even though it's a real place, but it's a faraway
It
place.
is, it is.
So I'm taking care of the people in Timbuktu, but my own
People are going hungry.
Right.
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 And he got criticized for it.
Uh-huh.
He got criticized for taking, but if you don't have that support system in there, you don't have the ability to take care of anybody else, right? So it's
Right.
kind of that, moving away from the thing that I'm not taking care of giving my kids food and paying my house payment,
Mhm.
but you want me to send the money for bread to
Mhm.
Asia or
Mhm.
some island in the Pacific.
Siberia.
Okay, so this is kind of what I'm trying to say about this survey, is the idea that you have to have a foundation, but
Mhm.
okay, so it's really getting far away
Now,
from
what
tolerance.
would you do if that was you were asking us? Well, how would you feel, what would you do if it would be like Mr. Brown, you know, to do that?
I'm just saying, what do
or
you,
not
what do you
Mr.
think
Brown,
about
yeah,
that?
Yeah, it's, I can see it both ways, but that's because it's me, that's all. I see it both ways. I don't want to contain it to my country, to keep it so that we're still alive, to produce our own, go off back to the farm and, you know, grow our eggs and, you know, it's like,
Well,
just
the
like
idea is,
self-sustaining till we get back on track and then spread it out. But at the same time, they're like, it's not very nice. You're profiling yourself, or basically you're calling yourself better than anybody else in a country.
well, we're getting late here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read the postmodern culture, and we're going to close for the night, okay?
Mhm.
There's a crisis of belief. Our culture has developed, well, first of all, there's a distorted belief about God,
Mhm.
okay? A distorted idea of the truth. Okay, all these different things they're showing us that everybody thinks that their truth is truth, but truth can't, 5 different things that are opposed cannot all be truth.
Mhm.
Okay, and our culture is a distorted view of reality. Okay, 47 out of 100 evangelicals believe that truth. Only 47 out of 100 evangelicals, that's Protestants, believe that truth can be known. 47%. The general in churches today, generally people don't believe that. Less than half of the people believe that truth can be known. That we can't know what truth is. That it's a intangible thing. It's moving. Huh?
Are we going to Darwinism or something, you know, it's kind of.
Okay,
cross
so
of it.
what is
47%?
your general perception of the distorted belief about God? Do you have a perception about the people's belief about God?
You're looking at me.
I'm looking straight, that's
I know,
what.
I know, and I happen to be straight right on you.
Right.
You try it. What do you say? What's your opinion, Jacqueline? Come on. Can't be wrong. It's only you.
Right, if you believe it, it's true, right?
It's true. Right. That's what we just were reading about it, so it don't matter what we think.
Do you think that people have a correct belief about God, generally?
Yeah. No. I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know.
You-
I really don't.
Okay.
Some people believe there's only one God, and it's their God.
So we got, yeah.
I mean, some people believe that we all make up a unit, we're all part of God. Some people believe there is no God,
Right,
and we
right.
can't all be right. And some places,
I
like in
just-
India, they have many gods.
Oh, yeah, 800,000 of them or something. Yeah,
So we can't all be right.
no.
I just didn't know how to respond to that. I really didn't.
You have to think, I'm just,
I mean, to me personally, I believe the Bible is true. That's what I truly believe, because that's what I know. Now, it could be, others can say I'm wrong. That's
okay,
your
well,
opinion.
let's take a look at that this week.
Mhm, mhm.
What, when you look around at what people you know believe, what you see in the papers about what God, for some people, well, we'll talk about a little bit, but then we'll
I mean,
start off
a
with
real
this.
common thing that I hear a lot from people is, there's no such thing as hell. That, you know, or hell is on earth. And that just kind of blows my mind and get into a disagreement over that. But a lot
In
of
your
people
shop?
believe that, you know, modernistic belief that, you know, our hell's here on earth, and when we die, it's over. Which, you know, I don't believe, but there's a lot of people that believe that way.
So you could see how that they would be very live for the moment, gratifying for themselves,
Right, self-satisfaction.
and also no hope if their
Right.
situation is
I think that's
miserable.
one of the problems why so many people are committing suicide today, because they don't have any hope. They don't have any hope in anything, that there isn't anything else to look forward to.
that it can never get better.
Right.
Okay, so why don't we take a look at this idea of these distorted beliefs about God, about truth, and we'll revisit that next week. We really spent a lot more time going over this first section than I really had anticipated, and I'm completely surprised. But, so we'll have to
God's
finish
in
up.
control.
We'll have to finish up
That's right.
this lesson next week, and so, we'll start with distorted belief about God. And, so read chapter 5 in ethics. We will start on relational apologetics next week, I think. And complete the chapter 5 homework questions, and we'll see how far we get next week with this other thing. Hopefully it don't take so long. We're gonna have to listen to this and find out. All set? Okay, so we're gonna continue with lesson 5, and we're gonna go back and we're gonna look at the tolerance section and clarify a few things there, okay? So, as we said, tolerance, Josh McDowell described it as traditional tolerance, which is viewed as negative or small-mindedness, respecting others' beliefs and practices without sharing them, or to bear or put up with something not especially liked. And then he described a new tolerance, which is viewed as positive, and the way we should act is every single individual's beliefs, values, lifestyles, and truth claims are equal. And that kind of doesn't seem very practical or logical, that everything can be equal. And as we continue to go on, and evaluate things, we could probably understand why. Ravi Zacharias said in his book, Jesus Among Other Gods, truth cannot be sacrificed at the altar of pretended tolerance. Some beliefs are false, and we know them to be false, so it does no good to put a halo on the notions of tolerance as if everything could be equally true. And then Ryan Dobson said about tolerance, it's a virtue of those who believe in nothing. Rather than stand up for what is right or wrong, the voice of tolerance says we should just let everyone be, that we'll better understand each other if we accept them as they are. Okay. So I wanted to go back and talk again about the World Values Survey that I mentioned. It was the group that does this survey is a secular group. They're based in Scandinavia, so they're on the more liberal or progressive side, and they've been doing these surveys evaluating trends since the 1980s. As countries industrialize, they move away from traditional values such as religion, rituals, which may be customs or traditions, deference to authority. And they start to move toward secular, rational values. As countries grow wealthier, nations move away from survival values, economic and physical security, and start to focus on self-expression values, which that was what I was kind of having a little difficulty kind of describing. When you are just making ends meet, you're not considering a lot of philosophical or social issues, okay? But now people are in the Western culture particularly, well, also they're more industrialized and modern, but also in many Eastern cultures or countries, they are not focused so much on what is necessary for them to make ends meet and to live, to put food on the table, but they're starting to concentrate more, and you can see it if you look on different kind of ideas and beliefs. For example, you see that there's more and more interest and advancing of the ecological or the green agenda all throughout the world. Is it necessarily bad? No, that's not what we're saying, that to take care of the earth, God wants us to take care of the earth. But they're focusing more on that type of an issue versus the need to live. When you're focusing on the survival, what are you thinking of? Breathing, right? Eating. What do you need to eat? You need to live somewhere. You need
shelter.
some type of a shelter. You need clothing and, excuse me? Water. Just basic type of things. But now, even beyond water, people are, having a variety of exotic type of beverages, right? Or instead of just having clothes, we have a multitude of styles or modes of clothing. Okay? So today, in the more advanced, more economically prosperous countries, and there are many in the Eastern world as well, they're thinking more now about other types of issues and other types of needs. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So then, when the United Kingdom Prime Minister Gordon Brown said in 2007, British jobs for British workers,
Right.
you can see that, well, that's not advancing the world economy. That's not taking care of the worker that's in rural Vietnam, for example. We should, instead of shipping our jobs out to Vietnam, we need to be taking care of the British worker. Now, who would be positive about that? Who would be applauding that statement by the Prime Minister?
The non-Brits.
The people that don't have jobs in that country.
The people that don't have
Right.
jobs in that country, right? Because if
Mhm.
I don't have money to pay for my shelter and my food and for my children's needs, is the rural worker in Vietnam my primary concern? And can I take that money from my children's mouths, when would I send it to
Right.
Vietnam?
Mhm.
Is that just? What would your children say? I have an example here, I wasn't thinking about using it, but what would your children say if, you've got this big upside down pyramid that I'm taking all my income at the top of the triangle,
Mhm.
and I'm donating it and giving my time and energy to taking care of stray cats. But none of that money filters down into my house's budget, and my children have to eat. They don't get the protein they need, for example. What would your children say to that?
Why are you spending all this money on stray cats, and you should be spending money on your children and making sure that they're fed?
Right, isn't that the higher priority? Is it wrong to take care of stray cats?
No,
Yep.
just your children is your main
Your
priority.
children need to come first. So that was the same idea with Prime Minister Brown, that he was saying that we need to make sure Britain can take care of itself.
Mhm.
Otherwise, other countries are going to need to be taking care of us, right?
Mhm.
And the British, but who criticized him in Great Britain? I mean, in the European community, I would think some other liberal thinkers also criticized him for that, maybe because he's thinking they're selfish, but the people in Britain that criticized him, who would they have been?
Probably a richer class.
A richer class, right? Because they have more free
Freedom.
money, they have more options. They're not concerned so much on the very, very basics.
They're
So,
on a limited budget.
yeah, their limits are a lot
They're the
higher.
top of the pyramid, not the
Right,
bottom.
they're at the
trickle
top of
down.
the pyramid. Okay, so what do you think, if you were acceptably tolerant of someone else, what would that look like to you? Not being too one scope or the other, not being too
Political or.
political or not being too small-minded. How would you feel that you should be tolerant of other people?
I just would want to treat people the way I want to be treated. and to be equal, and to be fair, and to be love, and to pass out what we can do for God.
That sounds fair to me. That
That's
sounds
what-
like the
that's-
golden rule, right?
Right, right.
You know, are we supposed to insult people because they don't believe like we believe?
No, not at all.
But both Christians and atheists do
Mhm.
the same thing, attack each other and say horrid things
Mhm,
about
they do.
each other's beliefs and ideas.
They do.
So really what we're talking about intolerance is treating people with love and respect.
Mhm. That's right.
And, you know, we don't have to be aggressive or insulting.
Mhm.
Just like we talked about, Jacqueline was talking about last week, that, you know, someone thought her belief in God was stupid.
Mhm.
Well, that's not tolerant, is it?
Mm-mm. Yeah. Nope.
No. But for us, we can be as equally intolerant and say that they say something about, understand, wrong about them and have wrong attitudes. What we need to do in our dealing with people is have an understanding of why they think that way,
Mhm.
even if we don't agree with it,
Mhm.
and where their beliefs came from. And that will help us to treat them with respect, even if we may strongly disagree with their opinions and their actions even.
Mhm.
So, and that helps us, why I'm saying that is understanding and looking at it, at where the people are coming from is very important as a chaplain.
Mhm.
Because we do things our own way. We have our standards, and that's where our actions proceed from, our convictions, right?
Mhm.
But the reason some people get into the problems they do is because of where they came from or how they were trained. You know, so instead of being judgmental, we talked about that,
Mhm.
it's helpful to understand what forces influence them. Okay?
Mhm.
So we're going to go on unless there's any other comments about that particular point.
Mm-mm.
Okay. The postmodern culture. Okay, the postmodern describes a particular era, a time period. It's an ID, identification. And like you have the Renaissance and the Romantic era, and you
Mhm.
have the Stone Age kind of idea. And the postmodern culture, that was an era that started in more or less the middle of the 20th century. Okay? And there's a lot of different characteristics. We're not going to go into a sociological study, but produced from that culture, that framework, and that educational point of view, as Christians, we can identify a couple of things, a crisis in their belief system. And we can see that their culture has developed a distorted belief of God. Okay? So what types of beliefs about God do we see today? Whereas, and this again is moving away from traditional values, right? What kind of ideas do people have about God today?
Kind of like they're all in or they're all away. It's
Yeah.
hard to have a happy medium in the center. And each relationship with God, they all have their own opinions, and they all believe that theirs is right. And they won't budge or hear about the other things. I had the problem just today with that. So it's real strong in my heart right now.
Okay. Well, before, wasn't it, well, not probably during your lifetime, but when my mother was growing up,
Mhm.
it was generally accepted that there was a God.
Mhm.
Because my mom's about, I think she's a little older than you, but, you know, that was generally accepted. Now, whether people attended church or not it was a foundational thing. Children grew up knowing that about God.
Mhm.
And because Christianity was the majority religion in the United States, they're talking about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is the same foundation for Islam and Judaism.
Mhm.
Okay, which those are, in the world, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism are the only religions that I know of that have one single God, God person.
Mhm.
Okay. There might be some others out there, but those are major religions. Okay. So today, people don't even believe that he exists. Some people believe that everything is part of the universe is part of a supernatural being. So there's a big change in the mindset of the American culture today.
Right. Right.
And we're talking about culture, we're talking about our culture because this is what we're working with. Okay? And within the American culture, there are subcultures.
Mhm.
And they're more prominent than they were, again, in the 1950s when my mother was becoming an adult.
Right.
Okay. At that particular time, there was a strong American identity, and people felt a pressure not to identify with other nationalities.
Mhm. Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
And my mom would tell me that you didn't feel like you could let someone else know if another language was spoken in your home.
Mhm.
Okay, that's how she felt.
Mhm.
So that the people more tried to fit in, and they called the United States a melting pot, which is not true anymore.
Mhm.
Because now you can see, instead of blended threads in our tapestry, that there's very strong individual
Mhm.
flavors
Mhm. Mhm.
in our society, which is not wrong or bad.
Mhm.
I think suppressing someone's identity and their roots is not giving them respect
Mhm.
and understanding.
Mhm.
This is where you came from. This is you know,
Mhm.
it's part of who you are. Okay. So the belief about God is not accurate. Where do we get our belief about God? Where should we get our belief about God?
Church.
Well,
Your parents. Your
well, those are different places.
right.
But if the Bible is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
The Bible that he wrote to talk about himself.
Right.
Okay.
If you were growing up in that relationship.
Right.
I personally didn't touch the Bible till I was 55.
Right.
Wasn't allowed, so.
Right.
But
So
I
you can
understood.
get that.
Okay.
Okay.
That's why I
Okay.
didn't say
And also, we'll get more into God in the next subtitle.
Mhm.
So there's a distorted belief about God. The culture has a wrong version of what truth is, wrong idea about truth. Okay, and I think I mentioned, I saw in when I was doing this, looked at this World Values Survey, that only 47 out of 100 evangelicals, that's a Protestant,
Correct, don't believe in truth.
believe that it can't be known.
It can't be in public.
And
Right.
I've got a different statistic in the next section about relational apologetics, so I don't know which one is more recent. Okay, so our culture has also developed a distorted view of reality.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of, we'll continue. All right. So, who do you think God is? And what do you think God is like? I'm asking a question.
Answer it again?
Sure.
I think God is my friend. That's what I think.
Okay,
My
so in
friend
your relationship with God,
is
part
total
of it is that.
relationship because of the Word, reading the Word,
Okay,
which is His love letter to me.
okay. Yes, ma'am.
I think of him as like a father, because I don't really have one. Someone to talk to, pray to, and be there.
Okay, and the Bible does talk about
Mhm.
God as our
Our
Father.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
So there's, in our relationship with God, there are many aspects of God, many faces of God. Not that He's got a face here and a face here and
No,
a
no,
face
no,
here and
no.
a face here, but facets, like a jewel, right? A
Mhm.
jewel has different edges, and that they reflect different things. And based on our needs in our life, He sometimes reveals Himself more strongly as one thing or another. When I
Mhm.
was a teenager and I started my relationship, started really knowing God, He was like a refuge. That was a strong identification to me.
Mhm.
He was the person that was defending me. He was
Mhm.
my,
Protector.
He was a protector.
Mhm.
You know, that was very strong to me,
Mhm.
because like Chaplain, I had nobody that was running I felt like I had nobody that was running interference, and
Mhm.
I felt like I was thrown out to the wolves,
Mhm.
but He was the one where I could take shelter.
Mhm.
And we have, for example, Psalm 91 that
Oh,
talks
right.
about under the shadow of His wings, you know,
Right.
like and there's an image in the
Protection.
Bible
Protection.
of a mother hen
Mhm.
protecting her chicks.
Under her wings, right.
But I don't have that strong. It's not any less true now, a few years later. It's still true, but because that isn't my primary focus of who
Mhm.
God
Mhm.
is. Okay.
He does show Himself exactly where we need Him to be at the circumstance of where we are.
Right.
That's wonderful. He's so large, so big, so it's so powerful, but yet He's so comforting at the same time.
So today, when people consider a God,
Mhm.
a higher power, that some people call Him, when they believe that there is, or even people that call themselves Christians, many times people create an image of God according to how they want Him to be.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm talking about, that making a personal God. They're customizing God and taking who He is and chipping off this part and this part and this part, and only leaving the one part that they want Him to be. For example, some people might, or how they view Him, some people may think that God is
Right.
judging them,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? That He's
Mhm.
always
Sure.
judging them. Or other people might consider God as like Santa Claus or a sugar daddy.
Mhm.
You know, He's
Mhm.
just somebody that gives you what you need,
Mhm.
and there's no other interaction. They might think He's unfair or a tyrant.
Right. Right.
But that's a change from the true image of God today. And people piece together faith so that they don't offend anyone.
Yeah, it's sad.
Okay, so there's an attitude, and in one way it goes along with accepting people's beliefs, but it's to an extreme of whatever works for you is fine.
Mhm.
But God doesn't say whatever works for you is fine. When I'm saying there's a positive aspect to that, it's that, well, if that's what you want to believe, and you're not going to believe what the Bible says is true. And that's
Mhm.
what our foundation is
Mhm.
as Christian chaplains, is the Bible.
Correct.
Because that's what God's handbook that He gave for us to guide us And that's where we get the majority of our wisdom from,
Mm-hmm.
is from God's word. So when we're saying whatever works for you, they're saying, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you want to worship monkeys? And that's fine. You can worship monkeys. That's good for you. You want to dance around and let snakes bite you? That's a little weird, but if it works for you. Okay. And other people say, are very extreme, well, it's stupid, but if you want to do it, go ahead, But it's not really whatever works for you, because the Bible talks about man does what's right in his own eyes, and not necessarily in the eyes of God.
Mm-hmm. The flesh,
Okay.
not the spirit.
So what we need to do is avoid what the popular culture does,
The
is
norm.
try to make God fit them,
Mm-hmm.
and not us or them fit God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Our perception of God and our understanding of God will grow as we spend more time learning about Him in the Word of God. Now, is He only a friend?
No, not
No,
at all.
sometimes, just
No.
like a father, He's kind of going to spank you.
Right, that's right,
He's
right.
going to show, this is not quite right, so,
He doesn't condemn,
but He doesn't
He-
condemn.
he doesn't condemn, but he lets you know, he lets you know,
Okay.
oops.
So, a lot of what we talked about in the early part, the first part of lesson 5, goes along with this idea of a distorted truth.
Mhm.
Okay? The majority of society no longer believes in an absolute moral truth.
That's sad.
If you look at movies, for example,
Yeah,
the good guy does bad things for a greater good.
mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
But it sure makes business.
It's contradictory, right? That
Right.
the ends, and there's a phrase, the end justifies the means. So there is a standard. There is an absolute standard of right and wrong.
Mhm.
But as we can see through our lifetimes, all of us individually, that has shifted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that shifts,
Mm-hmm.
the middle ground always shifts with the ideas of society.
The norm.
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right. Okay. The postmodern view is that truth is subjective and personally determined. So my truth could be different from Henry's truth, or your truth, or your truth.
Correct.
How could that be truth?
Different circumstances.
Well, I can see that if you were all witnesses to a crime or a disaster, and you were giving your testimony about it, to
Eyewitnesses
the
never
police,
change.
your
Yes.
eyewitness account might be different,
Right, correct.
and you're looking at a true incident.
Mm-hmm.
But if you see,
Everybody's perception is
It's
different
different.
on what
Yeah.
they see
That's
Right.
right.
and what they observe when they're seeing something.
so it's the
Something
same.
that I might notice as, what color shirt, what color hair or something, somebody else might not see that, or if they were light-skinned or dark-skinned, or,
Right.
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 But that's not the same thing as determining what truth is. And truth is very important in order to build a foundation, understanding what actual truth is. It can't move. If truth keeps moving,
Mm-hmm.
if the foundation is shifting, how can you build society?
Not very good.
It can't, If you build a building on sand, what's going to happen?
It shrinks, it
Apart.
falls down.
Okay. And there are subtle shifts in
Beliefs.
the church, okay?
Mhm.
We take a verse and we make it mean what we want it to mean, or what we think it should mean, versus what God is absolutely saying. So
Mhm.
instead of saying, what is God saying in this verse, people are giving their opinions in churches about, or in conversations or Bible study groups, whatever. Their opinions about the verse.
Mhm.
There's a difference. There's truth, and then there's your opinion, like the eyewitness account of the
Right,
truth.
right.
Okay. And in this modern society, people are conditioned to believe that truth is not truth until we choose to believe it.
Mhm.
The truth that God created the world, that God is, that He always was and always will be. Is it any less true because I choose not to believe He exists, that He created the universe? It's still true, right?
Right, it's still true.
It's still true. But so that again is inconsistent with logical thinking,
Mhm.
right? So it and I'm going to explain this phrase. Common belief is that all thinking is social construct. Okay, we talked, you were in the class before, so you know what a little bit about.
Mhm.
It's social constructionism is a theory of sociology or communication that basically says that your understanding of the world forms the basis for shared assumptions about reality. Okay, that's pretty foggy, right? But for example, in Columbus's time, everybody, the understanding of the world was that it was flat,
Flat. Right.
right? So they shared the same belief, the assumption that this was reality. To them, because they believed it was flat, that was reality to them.
Mhm.
And, you know, the sailors thought they would
Fall off.
fall off the edge of the world, right? And
right.
who knows where they.
The sky's falling, the sky's falling. Right.
But as more,
Technology and.
yeah,
If you wanna
advanced
say
in studying,
advanced
they found out
studies.
that that wasn't true,
Mhm.
okay? But in some places, that might still have been
Mhm.
considered the reality,
Mhm.
okay? There are people today that say the Holocaust did not take place in World War II.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they believe that's reality. In India, for example, reincarnation is a foundational belief.
Right.
And they believe that you come back again as a higher or lower form.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. According to the Bible, that's not what we should be
Mhm.
considering as true. But for them, that's reality.
Mhm.
And that their family could come back as an animal,
Mhm.
or in human form, or higher or lower case. So that's their reality. Different cultures or segments of society have common understanding, and that's reflected in their point of view. Okay, so there's a book called Peace Child. It's about missionaries going to a primitive society, And in that society, treachery was, and this is a true story, it's an actual account. And in this area, the treachery was considered very high value.
Good, very good, yeah.
Right. If the more treacherous you were more of a hero, which is kind of hard for us to understand because even criminals don't like you to snitch on them, right?
Correct.
Right. But so when these missionaries talked about Judas betraying Jesus, he was a hero. Really, that's kind of, odd. So that was kind of like, oh, now what do we do? We're trying to talk about God. And there was also so how do we spread the gospel? Okay. So I'm just going to, this is just what I'm talking about to show you that different societies, and they all had that
And
common
belief
assumption
system.
they believed.
Their own
So
belief system.
Jesus was weak and Judas was a hero. So,
They're all different.
right. I had, there was a man that I worked with in Belgium who was part of our church. He came from Latin America. And this was very hard for me to understand. But he felt that higher socioeconomic groups intentionally tried to keep them down, his group down. And he felt that way equally about us as the leaders in his church, which that
doesn't jive with your personalities.
well, a leader
I
in your
know,
church
I know.
is supposed to be
Guiding everybody.
right, guiding, helping, but that because he was from there, the idea was to keep him the political authorities, religious authorities, that people are
Putting the thumb on.
trying to keep him under their thumb. And that really didn't, it grated, because how could you go to someone's church if you thought they were trying to control and dominate you? Right?
Yeah, why would you stay there?
Yeah. So that goes along with the very last point here in this distorted idea of truth. It's something they believed. A common belief is any system or statement that claims to be objectively true or unfavorably judges the values, beliefs, lifestyles, and truth claims of another culture is a power plan and an effort by one culture to dominate other cultures. This person was from Latin America, and that was a very common belief that a different group is trying to dominate them. Okay? So in the world today, if I don't agree with your values or your beliefs or how you're living, if you're doing drugs or whatever, or if I don't accept your truth claims, that I'm trying to control you and dominate you and manipulate you. And many people in the world resent and resist America's influence because they consider it the same, in that same vein, that our country and our culture, general culture, is trying to impose
Everybody else.
ourselves over everybody. And I don't think that that's
True at all.
that's the motive behind everything. You know, it having been very prosperous and strong. I mean, you look at Coca-Cola, It's everywhere,
Mhm.
you know. It just spreads. So if you can compare the American policies compared to the Communist Manifesto, for example,
Oh, yeah.
which is very truly, the goal in there was to control and make everybody
Step forward.
subject to that, to
Mhm.
take over, you know. But when you relate that to religion, that oppressiveness, you can understand why the world wants to throw off that control.
Mhm. Bottom line is greed. Just me. I think it's just me. Power.
And particularly if you look at
Afraid. Fear.
Europe, that was very historically true, that
Mhm.
the religious figures were political figures as well. They were involved, and they controlled
Correct.
the
The kingdom.
poor, uneducated populations.
The kingdom of their country.
So, you know, and they used religion to keep people in line.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you can understand from the world's mindset, from that point of view, why any religion would be ugly and undesirable.
Mhm.
Okay. Distorted view of reality. As a society, we become very pragmatic, meaning that we're more interested in practical, concrete things and actions versus abstract thoughts and concepts and
Creativity.
ideas.
Creativity.
Right.
Negative and creativity.
They're convinced that what is true and relevant is what works right now. If it works,
Mhm.
it's right for you.
Mhm.
Okay.
I can see it, feel it, touch it, work.
The big difference between what works for right now and what is right,
Mhm.
oh, there's a big difference between what works for now and what's right. If you're doing what's right, it's always going to work.
Mhm.
Okay. And one of the things that we have to understand is God has given us a free will and freedom of choice.
Mhm. To make our own mistakes.
Right. So that isn't, he's not made us robots.
No.
Okay.
But like the word says, the truth will set you free.
Mhm.
Just the word.
Okay. I mentioned that heroes in movies today,
Mm-hmm.
like if you look at, you know, any Arnold Schwarzenegger movie
Mm-hmm.
or Jason Bourne, you know, they're
Freddy.
The Terminators.
you know,
Total Recall.
doing not so nice things
Uh-huh.
for a just cause.
Right.
Okay, that could be compared to this example here of a student lying on an exam to get into Bible school. You can see the silliness of
It's comical to me, but yeah, it's true. It happens.
You can see the silliness on that example, but the
Mhm.
world doesn't see.
Right, that little white lie to
Right.
get it right.
The same thing in a different scenario.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so what's our solution? All right, we need to understand how deeper beliefs in God and His Word can ground us
Mm-hmm.
in our relationship with God so that we're able to answer the fundamental questions of life. And why is that important for us? Because we need to be grounded and established and building our lives on the truth so that we can help all these other people that are walking on this shaky ground.
That's right.
Okay, understanding why their lives are so chaotic.
Mhm.
All right? And we can, pointing them to the principles in God's Word, even if they don't accept it as the Word of God, will straighten out a lot of the problems in their lives.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay?
It did mine.
Okay? To believe something means to accept it as true, genuine, or real.
Mhm.
Okay, a lot of people believe something that may or may not be true, genuine, or real.
That's
What I'm
true.
talking about.
That's true.
And they, in having a conviction of something, you're so thoroughly convinced that something is absolutely true that you will take a stand or act on it regardless of the consequences. Okay?
Mhm.
When I look at different people that I have met from different countries that came from a very strong communist influence, okay? They believe something and they act on it. Okay, some people might believe something, but they don't have a strong conviction, so they don't put it into action. Okay. When I'm relating it to us is as Christians and trying to help people with our faith. Okay. We need to not just believe, but we need to be acting on our beliefs. Okay.
Mhm.
And the next lesson is, we'll talk more about relational apologetics. It gives us rock solid reasons to believe the Bible, what's true,
Mhm.
and a biblical blueprint for living out those beliefs in relationship to others.
Mhm.
So it's a structured belief system, which is a philosophy.
Mhm.
Okay, it's a philosophy of life, and some people can believe it, but is it alive too, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that kind of belief with convictions will open the way for anyone to live life in all its fullness, as Jesus said. So that's our ultimate goal as well when we're dealing with people, is so that they can live those things not just as rules and just steps that they have to, requirements for them to live. We want them to be able to follow those precepts and let it be something that makes them satisfied and filled. Okay, so is there any comments about culture and tolerance?
Mhm.
That was more than enough. You guys are done with it, right?
It's a tough call. It's a tough call. It's a.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I just want to go, if you don't have anything to say or questions about any of this at this point.
I can wait until after, because then.
Oh, okay. Then let's look at the homework questions for week 5. There's
Okay.
2 different questions that I just want to touch on. Question 1, it talks about 5 factors which names the 5 factors that can tarnish the golden rule. Okay, and it brings out pleasure, pressure, power, pride, and priorities, which one or all or a few, whatever combination, can act in different people's lives. So I'm not personally going to probe into areas where you're susceptible, but how could pleasure or pressure or pride or power, or we'll probably discuss a teeny bit, priorities, cause you to vary or cause people to vary from the golden rule?
Keeping up with the Joneses, for one.
Okay, which is under which?
The 5 factors, you mean? Pressure.
Pressure, there
Pressure,
could be a
pride.
pressure.
Pressure, pride.
Pressure, pride,
Mhm.
okay?
Mhm.
Okay, can you identify something under any one of these topics that, these factors that, how they pressure people not to be good to people?
Oh, me?
All of you.
Yeah, I know. It's, pressure not to, it's like, you know, the people that you smoke, it's like, oh, it's cool to smoke, you don't have to worry because you're a part of the norm, and it's like the more you smoke, the more you drink, it's all happy, 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 fun, fun, fun. You're pressured into doing that because you're trying to keep up with the norm, you're trying to keep up with everybody else, and it's just a total pride factor, but it's also total destruction at the same time.
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure, yeah,
Peer pressure.
yeah.
And you can see that in sometimes, a thing that's very in the public eye today as far as bullying.
Right, bullying, right. Yeah.
Right. People feel that peer pressure to belong to a group,
Mhm.
and so they don't stand up for somebody that's right, something that's right, or
Sure.
against something that's wrong. Or if you see like mob rule, when you have a riot, you just get in a frenzy, and they could somebody could say something about a teenager walking by them, and all of a sudden they go and they beat him to death.
Right.
Priorities. A parent could be so focused on achieving success at their job that they don't take care of their family the right.
Mhm. They don't balance it out, right.
They don't balance it, or their health.
Right.
Okay? So, pleasure, I'm more interested in eating chocolate cake than, eating good foods and exercising for my body,
Mhm.
I'm just describing these factors, not how they apply
Mhm.
to the golden rule, for example. Power, it happens in churches, it happens in government, it happens just in business.
Mhm.
You get to reach a certain level, and it's not good enough anymore, and you just want that
Control.
control. And you look at someone like Napoleon
Mhm.
or Hitler,
Mhm.
okay? And that can motivate you to do things that are not what you would have done 5 miles back down the road.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I don't want people to know how insecure I am,
Do what
that-
they want me to do.
it's parallel, it's a characteristic of pride,
Uh-huh.
then I'm gonna come and I'm gonna talk to you real nasty
Uh-huh.
to make myself feel better. Yes, ma'am?
Can I use an example?
Sure.
Okay, so when I worked at Kroger for 4 years, and there was this manager that I had 4 years, and she thought that she had all this power. We had special needs kids, and she would scream at them, cuss at them, be very rude to them, and customers would complain about her, employees would complain about her, and it got to the point where she got fired. And she is a Christian too.
That's sad.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, I mean, that shows too that
Power.
we need to be on guard.
Mhm.
We,
Right.
We can all fall short.
that's right.
Sure.
Okay. And that goes along with number 4. Strong leaders seem especially prone to abuses of power. So I'm just pointing that out because when you get to a certain level in government, for example, you
Mhm.
think that the rules don't apply to you
Mhm.
anymore.
Right,
So
right,
that
right.
you can take this money, or you can, have
Do whatever
relationships.
you want because
You got the power.
You got the power to do it.
I'm the king or queen.
So I thought it was,
That even happens in churches.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to a church and the pastor said, you know, I wear the cross around here, so I can tell you what to do.
Ooh,
yeah.
yikes.
So I'm just bringing these things up so that you can see, just to highlight this and to open our eyes a little bit to how those things affect the people around us.
Right,
But also in our exercising this ministry out in public, areas that we need to be on guard. And that's why it's good to have accountability.
Mhm,
That's
right.
why it's good to have other people in your life who will say, you know what, I think that, you know, that was a really wrong attitude.
Mhm,
You know, I think you need to watch this here. And when somebody takes the time to point something out to us, whether we agree with them or not, it's a good moment to take a look and say, what is it that I can better myself in that area? Now, if somebody's telling me that, you know, I'm ugly and fat and, you know, I need to, you know, get a whole makeover or whatever, that's a little bit extreme and hurtful, but also, you know, it could be that I just don't take care of myself. Okay, so there is a positive
Aspect.
even to very, very negative things. So does anybody have any specific thing that they want to share about the homework questions from week 5? Anything stand out besides some of the things that I brought up?
I say number 2, it got me personally, because that's one of the hardest for me personally to take constructive criticism to the point of truth without hurt, because it's new to me. That part is new to me in my life.
Right, because most of the
So-
time criticism
Right.
is intended to be hurtful
Right.
and insulting
Right.
and negative. But
Right.
there is instructional criticism.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. This is what I wrote. I said, when I'm under pressure, when I'm under extreme pressure, this is in my head, actually do it, can't say 100% of the time, but I say I stop and think about it before I react. Like to step back and go, let me think about it. It doesn't work all the time, but you know, it's in my head. I'm thinking I'm doing it, but it's a work in progress. And then I said, for 2B, I put, is it natural reaction to relieve pressure at all costs? I said, yes, my natural reaction is to relieve the pressure, and my personal reaction is. And then the next one was, or do you try to grow and learn from the experience? And I said, yes, and yes, I now try to grow with the decision I've made to fix the problem.
It's very common when you deal with people that instead of dealing with the situation, people are going to run. They're
Right.
trying to get people, if you have a financial problem, people do whatever they can to get out from under that.
Correct.
It could be in stealing. Now, also, a drug addict has the same type of pressure and need.
Correct.
Not a good reason, it's a very negative thing that's causing them pressure. I mean, having enough money to pay your bills and put food on your table and pay your car payment, whatever, that's something that's a responsibility. Whereas taking drugs is not, it's
an escape to
it's an
feel
escape.
better.
But when you're pressured by your addiction and your need for drugs, you find people doing the same type of thing. And the Bible talks about people don't look at a thief, they don't despise a thief who steals so he can eat,
Right.
but
Right.
it's not, they do when you're stealing for your own greed.
Mhm.
Okay?
Correct.
Not that stealing is good,
Correct.
but there's different ways of,
Mhm.
you know, forces
Mhm.
that push us
Mhm.
to do the same wrong action.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else?
Mm-mm. Yes, I know.
Okay,
What'd you
so
do?
she's private. She doesn't have to share with you.
I said,
I'm just, you don't have to say anything.
She just needs a little prodding sometimes.
Well, you've just talked more in this lesson, in this class, than you have the whole 5 weeks put together. What do you mean?
She's getting used to us. We don't bite.
We're comfortable.
I basically wrote down what she said about like pressure, like think before you act. Pretty
Right,
much,
yeah.
you know, you don't want to do something and like do something irrational, and you know, think before you.
Because sometimes we could regret it, and if we stopped and analyzed the situation, we could take a better choice.
Right, correct.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna stop here.